Mr. Guskovich? Here. Mr. Sommer?
Here.
Ms. Mueller?
Here.
Mr. Little?
Here.
Ms. Mathis?
Here.
We have a quorum present.
I would like to welcome everyone to the June 9th, 2026 City of Edgerton Planning Commission meeting. Will you please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I would like to thank everyone in the room for attending this evening's meeting. It is important that our meeting is conducted with dignity and respect for all attendees and participants, and that the Planning Commission has the ability to conduct business as provided on the agenda. The first item on the agenda tonight is consent agenda. Do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Motion to pass. Second.
Ms. Mueller? Mr. Little? Mr. Sommer?
Aye.
Mr. Guskovich?
Aye.
Ms. Mathis?
Aye. At this time, planning commissioners, please declare any correspondence you have received or communication you have had regarding the matters before you this evening. If you have received any correspondence or have had any communication, do you feel your receipt of this correspondence or this communication might influence your ability to impartially consider tonight's agenda items? No. Now on to item number 6, public officials liability training.
Sorry, give me 1 second. Put the sound off for 1 second. Okay.
Oh, hello, Dan. Congratulations on being elected as a council member.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm really excited about it. It's my first meeting after being sworn in. Although I'm a little nervous.
Nervous about why you were elected by a landslide.
Well, there are several things I'd like to accomplish. I'll be the first to admit I have a lot to learn. I don't want to end up like former Councilman Smith. I want to have a successful term, but I don't want to end up being sued.
Hey, Dan, thank you for joining us tonight.
Hey, Bill.
Hi, I'm Margaret Taylor. I've been a council member here with the city of Cottonwood for 10 years, and mayor for the last 2. During my time with the city, we have made a lot of progress, but also a few mistakes. Certain members of the council have created messy liability situations that have cost the city a great deal of money, hurt our public image, and stalled important projects. And in some situations, elected officials have paid personal liability claims out of their own pockets. The purpose of this video and accompanying handbook is to help you avoid the mistakes that can lead to liability and identify best practices that will allow you to be successful as an elected or appointed official. SURSA presents, In the Scope of Your Authority, Preventing Public Officials' Liability.
That's a lot of good information. Well, thanks, Bill. I'll see you tonight. Oh, Mayor, do you have a few minutes to discuss some of those past mistakes?
Sure, Jen, come on in. Have a seat.
Thank you.
You referred to Councilmember Patrick Smith. He promised in his campaign he would never allow Megamart to build a store in Cottonwood, and he was pretty vocal about it.
I've had similar opinions about giant retailers, although I haven't been as vocal as Mr. Smith. Where do you go wrong?
Well, I don't think he ever accepted the fact that as an individual council member, he really didn't have the authority to act on his own. That's why Smith was never able to get anything done. He was pretty vocal about the few issues he was interested in, but rarely worked to build consensus within the council. Dan, pretty much everything we do requires collaboration within the framework of our council. Elected officials can't get anything done as individuals.
I see the point.
So the first lesson is to think and act in terms of we, not I. Apart from a few duties vested in the mayor, the laws that govern our city don't give any powers to individual council members. We've got a diverse council with a lot of different perspectives, and we can only accomplish our goals by working together. Now that you've been elected, your role changes dramatically. You're no longer an outsider promoting your own agenda. You now have to work with your fellow council members to accomplish the city's goals as a collective body.
Let me ask you more about Councilmember Smith. The Mega Mart deal, it was approved by the council, although by a close vote. What problems did Smith cause?
Remember all of his anti-Megamart statements? When it came time for us to actually hear and act on Megamart's land use application, he should have recused himself.
So we shouldn't have voted.
That's right. He shouldn't have participated in the hearing or voted. Smith had made it well known that he was aligned with the Megamart opponents. When we're acting in a quasi-judicial capacity, such as when deciding on a land use application or liquor license, we must be fair and impartial. We can't do that if we've already made up our minds before the hearing. Councilmember Smith had made it clear that he opposed the Megamart application. He was not acting as a fair and impartial decision maker. Fortunately, the Megamart application was approved by a small margin. Otherwise, the city could have been accused of a due process violation.
Due process?
Yes, the U.S. Constitution guarantees the right to a fair hearing as part of an applicant's due process rights.
During my campaign, I talked with a lot of my neighbors who are also anti-growth. I expressed to them my concerns about protecting our small businesses from giant retailers. Will that prevent me from voting on similar issues?
Well, the question is, if one of those big retailers comes before the council with a land use application, can you be fair? Can you make your decision based only on the evidence you hear and the requirements of our land use code? And can you set aside your previous discussions with your neighbors?
I can't ignore my neighbors. They elected me to represent them, not ignore them.
I'm not saying ignore your neighbors, but when an application is pending, you should not have discussions with anyone outside of the hearing. Our city attorney calls these discussions ex parte contacts. Your decision in a quasi-judicial matter must be based on the evidence presented. So when your neighbors want to speak with you about a pending application, explain to them it's inappropriate for you to talk about the issue outside the hearing. Suggest that they come to the hearing so their concerns can be heard.
Well, last year I called Councilman Miller and asked him to vote no on the pit bull ordinance. Did he engage in an improper ex parte contact?
No, that was a different situation. The council's consideration of the pit bull ordinance was a legislative matter. They were not dealing with the rights of a specific applicant under an existing law. The council was considering a new citywide law, so they were acting as legislators. Lobbying and other ex parte contacts are acceptable in the legislative context. But when you're in a quasi-judicial role, you've got to think and act more like a judge and refrain from engaging in or allowing ex parte contacts.
It makes sense when you put it that way. It's important not to base my vote on my biases or prejudice, and only consider the evidence presented at the hearing, like a judge.
Exactly. The other thing to keep in mind is to make sure you have no conflicts of interest when you're voting. If you were appearing before a judge and you learned he had financial or other conflicts of interest, you'd expect him to recuse himself, wouldn't you?
Well, sure.
Well, people who appear before us in a quasi-judicial matter expect the same. To be unbiased decision makers, we must be free from conflicts of interest. If we do have a conflict, we need to declare it, recuse ourselves, and not participate in the hearing or decision.
I think I understand. I think I recall reading in the paper about another incident involving Patrick Smith.
Oh, that was probably the lawsuit involving our library expansion. The council had selected a very qualified contractor to manage the project. Smith was always hanging around the construction site, thinking it was his job to micromanage the project. Needless to say, Smith ended up in a verbal confrontation with the contractor. Things got personal, and Smith started talking to other council members about terminating the guy's contract. He also spread some vicious personal rumors around town about the contractor.
That wasn't very smart. Did he get the contractor fired?
No, but the contractor sued Smith personally for defamation. Our insurance company declined to defend Smith because it was alleged he was acting outside the scope of his authorized duties and acting in a willful and wanton manner.
So that's why Smith had to pay for his own legal defense?
Yes, he was not acting within the scope of his authority as a council member when he started those vicious rumors.
I heard he had to take out a second mortgage to pay his lawyers and a large settlement.
Smith learned his lesson the hard way. Being outside the scope of one's authority or acting in a willful and wanton manner will result in the loss of liability protections and insurance coverages. Thank you. Now, Patrick Smith isn't the only elected official who's gotten himself in some trouble. Our former mayor, Joe Appleby, put himself in the middle of a personnel issue.
I think I remember this case. Tammy Williams was the director of public works, right? Didn't she try to stop sexual harassment in the street division?
What do you think about wearing something like that to work?
Jerks, idiots.
Guys, I've told you about this before. You can't keep doing this. First, I need to see you in my office.
In trying to clean up the division, she fired the street supervisor, Bert Simpson. Mayor Appleby, who was drinking buddies with Simpson, was furious and made it his mission to get Tammy fired, and he succeeded.
You know, your job can't be replaced.
She brought a lawsuit claiming the mayor retaliated against her for trying to eliminate the harassment. The jury awarded her $150,000 in punitive damages that Appleby had to pay out of his own pocket.
Wow. What were the key lessons in this case?
First, don't act on the basis of personal motives. It was obvious Mayor Appleby wanted to fire Tammy Williams to get revenge for his friend Bert. That was not in the scope of his authority. Second, we need to delegate personnel issues to the city administration. The council shouldn't be dealing with individual employees other than those who report directly to the council, like our city administrator. We should be focusing on the major legislative and quasi-judicial issues and leave administrative matters to staff. And third, never retaliate against someone for exercising their legal rights. Not only is retaliation against the law, but these claims are among the most difficult and costly to defend. We also had another fallout from the Appleby litigation. The press learned during the trial that Appleby was telling a lot of inappropriate jokes, and he was emailing them to the entire council. So the media demanded to see all of the council's emails over several years. Our city sure looked bad after the press got a hold of those.
Huh. I didn't realize emails were considered public record.
Sure. While there are narrow grounds for not releasing them under some circumstances, the basic rule is that emails may be public documents that anyone can review. If you don't want something splashed on the front page of the newspaper, we need to keep it out of our emails.
At least we're not the only city making these mistakes. Remember the scandal involving Councilman Arnold over in Clarksville after he got stopped for speeding?
Yes, he was caught on television yelling at the police officer for stopping him. I cringed when he shouted at the officer, "Don't you know who I am?" Talk about an abuse of power. And that brings me to perhaps the most important lesson. As elected and appointed officials, we must use our powers wisely and with civility. To misuse our position is absolutely improper and is not within the scope of our authority. We shouldn't try to put ourselves above the law or try to get some sort of special privilege because of our position.
Explain what you mean by acting with civility.
Well, as elected officials, we're perceived as holding the most powerful positions in the city. Because of that perception, our words carry a lot of weight. A harsh or ill-considered comment from any of us, especially if made public, can be extremely harmful to our employees' morale, as well as our public image. I once heard Appleby refer to our female employees as the staff hotties. It was embarrassing. Also, we should not participate in or encourage staff bashing in public meetings. We need to keep the focus on issues, not personalities. And then during Tammy's lawsuit, some of the jokes the mayor told during executive sessions were made public. We took another bashing in the press for those. Negative behavior like that can affect our entire organization. If we set a bad example at the top, we can't be surprised when it filters through the entire workforce. I'm so glad we moved on from those days.
Well, this is eye-opening and a little frightening. Do we have any protection from liability?
Yes, fortunately we live in a state where our liability protections are strong. For one thing, we have an excellent Governmental Immunity Act. Our Public Officials Liability Handbook has a good summary of our liability protections. But to retain these protections, we must stay within the scope of our authority and not act in a willful and wanton manner.
You've used those terms before. What would be considered willful and wanton?
Well, the actual legal definition is found in the handbook, but basically, it's the kind of conduct that got Appleby in trouble. When he got Tammy fired, he was more than reckless in disregarding her legal rights, purposely trying to damage her career.
Do we have any other protections?
Sure, we have excellent personal immunities, recognized by our courts when acting on legislative and quasi-judicial matters. But we do not have strong immunities when dealing with administrative problems. That's another reason why we need to stay out of administrative issues.
Got it. Let the city manager do his job.
And finally, we've got good insurance coverage through CIRSA, our public entity self-insurance pool. But those coverages only apply when we act within the scope of our authorized responsibilities. And they don't apply to punitive damages, as Mayor Appleby learned.
I see how these are all interrelated. Best practices, liability protections, and insurance coverages. And each area calls for us to meet certain standards of conduct. As long as we meet those standards of conduct, we should be okay.
I think you got it, Dan.
Thanks, Mayor. I really appreciate you taking the time to share your knowledge so I don't have to learn the hard way. Thanks for your insights.
You're very welcome. And one of the other best practices we put into place is liability training. We hold a session every year for our council members, boards, and commissions. We have a session scheduled next month.
Great. I'll be there.
Great.
Hey, thanks again, Mayor.
Absolutely. Dan's a sharp guy. I think he'll make an excellent council member, as long as he follows these best practices. Think and act in terms of we, not I. When acting in a quasi-judicial capacity, be fair and impartial. Don't make up your mind before the hearing. Base your decision on the evidence you hear at the hearing and the applicable law. Don't participate in the hearing or the decision if you have a conflict of interest. And don't engage in ex parte contacts. Refrain from personal or retaliatory actions. Focus on key legislative and quasi-judicial issues and leave administrative matters to the staff. And maximize your liability protections by staying within the scope of your authority and avoiding willful and wanton conduct. I hope this video has helped you identify how to stay within the scope of your authority as an elected or appointed official, maximize your liability protections, and enhance your effectiveness as a civic leader. Good luck.
I don't have anything unless Todd has anything to add.
No, just if you have any questions, let me know.
Anyone have any questions before we go to new business?
All right. We will now move to new business. Item 7, application FSP 2026-00002. Final site plan for Edgerton project located at 31800 West 196th Street. This application was tabled at the May 12th, 2026 Planning Commission meeting where the public hearing was held and closed. Will the applicant step forward to present their request?
You drop something if you need it.
Planning Commission, city staff, and members of the community. I'm Chelsea Kohanic, Director of Land Development for DMAC Digital. I'm here on behalf of DMAC Digital Solutions Kansas LLC, the applicant here for final site plan approval, FSP 2026-0002. Let me begin by thanking you for having us back to the meeting this evening to present some additional information. The commission and the community raised a number of very important questions on May 12th, and our goal tonight is to demonstrate that you have been heard and that we take your questions and providing these critical answers very seriously. At the heart of what we heard last month were 6 areas of concern, and we appreciate the opportunity.
Speak up a little, please.
Absolutely. What we heard last month were 6 major areas of concern, and we appreciate the opportunity to address each one tonight. First, the site, the suitability of the property in question, and how we would retrofit the building at 31800 West 196th Street for our proposed project. Second, water, a description of our cooling technology and the building management systems. Third, noise, equipment specifications and sound modeling that has now been performed by our engineering. Fourth, air quality. Details about the backup generators that would keep the facility online in an emergency and the EPA regulations to which we would adhere, as well as the cadence and practices for testing. Fifth, equipment. What happens when facility components are replaced? And finally, number 6, community. How we intend to make a positive impact in Edgerton and the surrounding areas as a long-term commercial citizen of the city. Our presentation this evening will walk you through these questions and the particulars of our response package that was submitted for your review. That package included our air permit application to KDHE, including equipment cut sheets and specifications, the results of the sound models performed by Bar Engineering, and a copy of this presentation. Let's briefly discuss the location of our proposed project. The warehouse building constructed in 2016 at 31800 West 196th Street. It is a 378,000 square foot warehouse building in the Logistics Park KC, an industrial park southeast of the BNSF intermodal facility and northwest of Interstate 35. We would adapt the existing building and construct power infrastructure to serve the facility on approximately 54 acres. The proposed site plan complies with all regulations for development in its district, and all new build-out would be designed to minimize external impacts, minimal traffic, very low lot coverage, and only a fraction of the allowable area. We do not own, nor are we under contract for, any additional land, and the natural features of this site, such as the existing floodway and the documented floodplain, limit the ability to expand. At any rate, any future growth would be subject to the approvals by the city and the planning commission. Water use. We heard many questions about water, and I'd like to spend a bit more time on this subject to fully address them. The facility's water use will be twofold: to support the cooling system and to meet the needs of its employees. For cooling purposes, we have proposed a closed-loop recirculating system. To fill the cooling loop, there will be a single draw from the municipal water system, and that water would be mixed with a propylene glycol. The total fluid will be 615,000 gallons of fluid. 65%, about 400,000 gallons, will be water, and the balance propylene glycol. There is a significant difference between a closed-loop chiller system and evaporative cooling, the latter of which has been commonly used in data centers. Unlike a closed, non-contact cooling loop, an evaporative cooling system can take up to 30 million gallons per month for a facility of the same size on a continuous basis. That is not the proposal here. Here's a diagram to more fully illustrate the cooling technology. A closed loop cooling system involves no evaporation, just the transfer and relocation of heat before the loop is cooled again. As you can see here, the system is filled and sealed and sent into the data halls, where it draws out heat and returns to the sealed cooling unit, which functions much like a car's radiator, in which the closed loop absorbs heat from the engine and enters the radiator where heat is transferred before the cooled fluid is sent back to the engine. We of course understand the skepticism that we might switch course and modify our plans or building to use a much more resource-heavy cooling solution. In order for us to switch to another type of cooling system, it would require very significant changes in our design and therefore our site plan. Those changes would be returning to the planning commission and with a different design and a separate set of approvals also by the water and sewer districts. Propylene glycol is a low toxicity compound. It is commonly found in home and personal products and has actually been deemed food safe by the FDA. That does not mean we will not act with caution. Our plans will include equipment and management in place in case of an emergency. The loop itself will be supported by a series of protective systems and measures, including sensors monitored by the building operations software on a 24/7 basis. There are shut-off valves throughout the cooling system and for isolation as well as containment to catch any cooling solution locally. Any leaks, should they happen, would be caught and contained close to the source and carefully discharged, which would be done via a qualified service provider to safely and securely remove it from the facility and dispose of it elsewhere. In the unlikely event of a spill, the system will alert its operators, the issue will be isolated, and any drain solution will be contained, captured, and taken off-site, never sent to the sewer or into the groundwater. We can cool the facility without drawing additional water daily after we fill the loop. However, our employees will need some of that water. We estimate daily use of about 2,500 gallons per day, including the number of employees. That is for flushing and washing hands to the tune of about 75,000 gallons per month. This usage is not subject to seasonal shifts. It will be consistent throughout the year. Because it is not cooling water, we won't be using more on hot days than on the typical weather scenario. Sound. To deliver you the data that you do deserve, we brought in a third-party expert to assess noise levels based on the design, outside at the property level and at the nearest residence to the southeast. Our consultant examined 3 scenarios: peak summer conditions with the chillers running typical operations in hot weather, peak summer conditions with monthly generator testing, and peak summer conditions with annual generator testing. In any of these scenarios, the total noise level would not exceed, is expected to be about 51 dBA at the nearest home to the southeast of the site, about 1,500 feet. For context, 51 dBA is somewhere between the noise level in a library and a normal conversation. There's insulation built into the equipment and of course screening walls.
Speak up a little more, please.
Absolutely.
You're fading down. Thank you very much.
Look into that first picture there. Oops. Perfect, thank
Just
you.
get mics, it'd be so much easier.
Okay. Is that your first one?
Yes.
Okay.
This represents the peak summer conditions. This is typical operations when the chillers are working hard in the summer to keep the facility cool. At the nearest residence, this 1,500 feet from the site to the southeast, our model shows 46 dBA. At the property line, 55 dBA. If you would mind, please.
Second one?
Yes, please. The next model demonstrated peak summer conditions with the monthly generator testing. The testing will be performed in accordance with NFPA 110. These are generator maintenance requirements to promote safe use and maintenance of generator equipment. What it means is that each month, all 60 generators will be tested in banks of 4 at a time for up to 30 minutes each. Testing means running the engines at a load of only a portion of what it can support at a total hours of about 7.5 per month. During monthly testing, the noise level is modeled at 47 dBA at the residence to the southeast and 65 at the property line. On an annual basis, we will perform the same process, but while running the generators at their full rated load with higher intensity, essentially, and testing in banks of 4 for up to 30 minutes, a total of 7.5 hours per year. These annual tests, if they happen during peak summer conditions, showed at the model at 51 dBA at the nearest residence and below 70 at the property line. The generators, including test run time, will be off 99% of the time. They are a last resort power source for the facility in the event of a grid scale power failure. The Kansas Department of Health and Environment, which gets its regulatory power from the EPA, reviews our operational plans and our equipment to make sure the facility meets its standards. Another item that has come up is the potential for e-waste with the facility. And to be very clear, this is the equipment life cycle. When we're done with the equipment, it is securely cleared of all data. It is tested, refurbished, and reused if possible, and if not reusable, the materials we've processed and extracted for use in new equipment. What results is a circular process to maintain equipment, reuse parts, and still be able to upgrade technology, particularly as it becomes more efficient and more sustainable. Finally, we know that being a good neighbor goes beyond just being a neighbor. We'd like to be an engaged member of the community. To help with that, we are proposing an Edgerton Coding Initiative, a free program open to all ages, students and adults, for coding and computer skills training. Through the DMAC Foundation, DMAC has backed similar programs across the world that have reached hundreds and thousands of students. We would bring that focus here alongside the additional support for the local organizations and causes that are dear to the community. We also intend to pay our own way. By current estimates, this project means more than 500 jobs, 15 to 30 permanent on-site jobs, more than $700 million in total investment, and by our approximation, more than $5 million towards Edgerton Streets and Stormwater Fund. Plus, the tax base for the city, community, and local schools. Please note that we will also fund the electrical infrastructure that serves us, so the cost does not fall on existing ratepayers. In summary, thank you so much for your time today. I hope that I've been able to do justice to the many thoughtful and very important questions posed by the commission and the community. If I have left any questions open, I appreciate the opportunity to address those items now. Thank you for your time, your attention, and your feedback.
I swear I'm gonna cry in the PA system. Not just for your business, walking in there. It's ridiculous. I don't even.
Did you have one additional note related to the generator testing? We are voluntarily going to limit ourselves to generator testing from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. weekdays only. This is not stipulated in the code, but it's a good faith measure that we will uphold as a member of the community.
Your name and notes from your team.
Will be available for questions questions, but, I will.
But it's a future.
Does staff have anything additional?
Yeah, we just have two quick things, so we will need the podium for us to get Chelsea. The first one I wanna talk about is, related to, the process if the application would be approved, which I think is important to share for both planning commission members and members of the public. Oftentimes we get questions about, what happens when they say things in a presentation, and how do we make sure that that's what occurs? And so there is a process by which that happens. So if an application, once an application is approved by the planning commission, then they actually, will start the building permit process. And as part of that building permit process, they will submit a full set of building permit plans that are required in the code. And then that set of building permit plans is reviewed by the city's, third-party consultant. So at this time, I'm gonna invite Joe Kometz from George Butler and Associates to come up to the podium for just a second, to walk you all through. I'm not sure Joe's had the opportunity to be before you all, so this is a great opportunity. Just to give you a hint of what happens, if the project would get approved, so that you all, as planning commissioners, can understand. So I'm gonna use the cooling system as an example. If DMAC says they're going to use a closed loop system, how do we make sure that that is what happens when they actually go to do construction? So, welcome, Joe.
Thank Planning Commission. Like I said, opportunity to introduce myself is, I'm thankful for that. Been working with the city since 2020, so long-standing partnership there. GBA provides a third-party building code service for multiple jurisdictions in Northeast Kansas. You are all the most long-standing of those. So, I'm a fire protection engineer licensed in Kansas and perform this function as building code in multiple places. So, the change to any sort of system, as Beth mentioned, is accurate, and it would apply to any sort of industrial, commercial, even to a single-family home. Change to any system that serves a home is subject to permit review and inspections. There is a list in each of the codes that govern both commercial and residential construction that exempts some certain scopes from permit, and it is very short. The amendments that are written into your city code read that way. So if any change would happen either after the project's complete or in project anything like that, then permitting requirements would apply. There's no exceptions here.
So the beauty for Joe and his team is they get that full set of building permit plans. They do that entire review as our third party, and then Joe and his team perform the actual inspection. So not just a review of those on paper, but then they are there in live and in person to make sure that that inspection and the construction happens in compliance with the code. So that when you all make a decision based on information presented tonight, I wanted you to have the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would say, on how that gets actually built into the real space.
I'm often accused of getting too far into the weeds, so I'll avoid doing that on building codes, but I would be happy to stand for any questions you have that relate to the building permit process.
And then the only other items that we would have, if you all didn't have any questions for Joe, is just, as I mentioned, as Chelsea mentioned before, so that the podium is, certainly they're offering a volunteer stipulation that we would encourage as a staff that get added to the motion at such time in the future when you all get to that part of the discussion. So I'm happy to help you with that one. But staff's able to answer the questions, or Joe if you have any.
Thank you. And I will now open it to commissioner questions.
I understand.
Before we take a vote, Mr. Lincoln, would you please remind us what we are voting on?
As we talked about last time, I think most of you were there, but, you've got a preliminary plat and a site plan. These are regulated under the city's, UDC, and they're submitted in accordance with the existing zoning. so this isn't a discussion or determination about conformance to the zoning comprehensive plan or any of the details that you would sometimes see in somebody's, a request for a change in zoning or a conditional use permit or similar. These are, technical documents in some respects that you are reviewing based upon the UDC to determine if they meet the standards stated in the code. And those have been outlined, I presume, for you in some detail so that you can make a determination as to whether or not to approve each one of these. So, that's the general overview, and certainly if you have questions about specific things, I'll be glad to answer. But did that answer your guys' question?
Any further questions?
There you go. So, in regards to anything that says we acknowledge, acknowledgement and doing are two different things, correct? In a plan, so if we acknowledge something, that's different than actually have a plan of doing something, correct?
I'm trying to figure out, you're saying, you
In
guys
context,
acknowledge?
in context of, I'm reading through their site plan, and they acknowledge something, but don't have anything being done. Acknowledging and doing are two completely different things, correct?
Well, in the context of that is not very concrete, I have to admit.
I mean, I get that, but
Well, because-
that's the point. Acknowledging is not doing, so that's not concrete enough, correct?
Well, no, I think what I would say is that the site plan puts in objective things, distances, locations, types of materials, that kind of thing. So if they're saying in the site plans or the plating or whatever, they're saying specific things that you can see on that page and say, okay, they're there, and are in the materials they provide, then they are representing that and those are material to the question you're doing, they are representing they will do that. If they were to come and to present this and then do, only 5 of the 10 things, the other 5 things they didn't do, then they're not compliant. And they would be subject to, enforcement. So, I mean, they're gonna be held to the facts of what they put in there. Now, I guess in that realm, I don't know what acknowledge means in that context, because if they say they're gonna have additions or material appropriate, they're gonna have it.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Acknowledgement is the standard language that most applicants use when they notify a deficiency in the plan and they're acknowledging that they have to fix that before we issue the approval. So it's pretty standard. You always see it in many planning commission packets that we've notified them of a deficiency or a concern, that their standard word back, not just to MAC, but across the board has been acknowledgement, which means it needs to be corrected before approval.
Okay. Understood.
Any other questions?
Diesel generators, all mounted on foundations above ground, correct?
Correct.
Okay. What do they need to know?
There's also an equipment list in your packet.
Yeah, I was going through that, and I saw the fuels and the belly pan and all that kind of stuff.
I have experts here who can answer them much better than I can if it was just
Okay.
questions.
Alright, thank you. Nope.
Okay. Now that we have concluded our discussion on this item, I would entertain a motion for the application. As a reminder, the planning commission is the deciding body for this application.
Well, I think I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion for denial based on 5.2.
Yes.
We go to H, bullet point 4, fuel storage, because the fuel storage is in a belly pan on your generator, correct? And according to our UDC code, all fuel storage on the property needs to be listed as below ground, as your option, so.
I will have to, if I may take a 5-minute recess and talk with the folks on the team who've done the design.
But my point is that nothing in your plans, I've gone through your entire site plans, I've gone through everything, and there is absolutely nothing that shows fuel storage. So, that means your fuel storage within your generators above ground, which does not meet our UDC code, correct?
Am I gonna start finding, should we take a, I'd like a quick recess, please, if I may?
That's up to city staff on that
That's
one.
up to the chair.
Chair?
5-minute recess.
Thank you.
I'll have a peppermint. I got lots of them. Ready? Peppermint? Indigestion. Natural. Read all of them? Everybody else?
Oh, last 2 weeks. See, I'm sticking it on it. It does sound good. What did Him? Really? Well, he's cute. No, you know now. They should consider if it's gonna be an accurate. So they should consider that, would you? But it wouldn't matter. It's 24/7 white. It's 24/7 white. And I don't remember including the building, it trickling from Little to Big Lake to go into the Hillsdale Lake. That Hillsdale Lake gives 40,000 people water.
Only if you're low. Gotta get your great roller.
So many people want my dog was a pregnant dog. In a year, I started on we've already ability training, so you can become council. You can check Wow. What a man.
No. Stuffed it with my foot.
Pardon me?
Too many.
That ring is about you, but we can't
I
run
have my hotel room on 60.
Oh, that's cool.
Thank you. We will put the fuel tanks below ground. We're happy to accept that as a condition of approval.
And that's, that word denied, correct, because it wasn't on the final site plan, but I made a motion to deny, because, yeah, what did you, second on that? I mean, we
Technical
can't-
point, I think you need to relate that to a standard in the site plan approval. Remember we talked about 10.1 H standard of approval. So there's 8 reasons, 8 standards, 8 criteria. I mean, relating it to, I understand you're relating it to something in the LD zone. I assume that which one of those, multiple ones, one or the other is where they've not met the mark.
Go under 5.2, go to H, bullet point 4, all fuel storage.
No. I'm talking
No.
about,
In regards to the site plans?
yeah, site plan, okay.
Well,
Article 10.
yeah, that's why I asked them where the fuel was stored at, and the fuel was stored in the belly tank, right?
I'm understanding that as legitimate. I'm saying that the review that you guys do is under 10, Article 10, not Article 5. It doesn't change the standards. I'm just saying you've got to fit your motion into one of those 8 standards, meaning is the site capable of accommodating buildings with building, parking areas and drives? 2, utilities are available or can be extended. 3, proposed plan. One of those has to be addressed here as being.
I mean, on the other stuff, that's literally 5.2 is under the purpose of dealing with our code requirements in the UDC. And this is listed under 5.2 within those codes of the UDC, right?
And I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm saying in subsection H, 10.1, it says the standard of approval. The planning commission shall give consideration of the following criteria in approving or disapproving the site plan, 8 factors. I'm trying to find, I can't tell you what it is, but is there a standard or criteria that they have not met because of that reason that we gave?
Let me pull up that so I can go through that one, but I mean, we're clearly not under the UDC code, so, I mean, we're trying to split hairs here, in my opinion.
The attorney is talking.
we'll have to go under Article 5 on that one. Article 5, they are not meeting, and they are not consistent with good land planning and site engineering design principles, because according to our UDC code, that fuel needs to be stored below grade, and it is not on any of the site plans, it is not within any of their data, and they also acknowledged that the fuel, they understood that the fuel needed to be stored underground, yet didn't make any changes to their plan to provide that, so.
We're happy to do that now as a condition of the approval.
I make my motion to.
Yeah, and I just wanna make sure you're amending your motion to state, in addition to the reason you stated.
Yeah, I was,
A5.
yes, because I need to fall under the correct,
Yeah.
yes, so I am amending to fall under that, and my reasoning is that under 5.2, they do not allow for fuel storage underground, everything above grade, which does not fall in line with our EDC codes. I make a motion to that.
Ms. Mueller?
I'm sorry, you're gonna have.
Yeah, aye or nay, aye
The
for.
motion, if you want to deny it, the aye motion, you wanna reject it, nay.
Can you just speak up? Aye.
Mr. Sommer? Mr. Treskovich?
Aye.
Mr. Little?
Aye.
Ms. Mathis?
Nay.
The motion carries 3-2 vote. Application FSP 2026-0002 has been denied.
Take care of the people.
Will staff please describe the next steps?
So the next steps, if they were to move forward, they would have to submit a new application, starting from scratch essentially with the final section.
Future meeting reminders, July 14th, August 8th, September 8th, all at 7, all regular sessions. Any? No. Having no further items on the agenda, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?